Welcome to the Student Honor Roll session for English 7B for the Module 3.18 Part 1 assessment. In this video, I'm going to be reading the two texts and analyzing the texts that are on this assessment with you. So let's get started. This is Mrs. Alexander. Let's begin. All right, as we read this first text called A Performance to Remember, I want you to keep in mind, what is the author's purpose? So as I'm reading, keep this question in mind. Do you think the author's purpose is A, to inform readers of a famous figure skater's path to success? Do you think it's B, to describe how different skating tricks have evolved over time? Do you think it is C, to persuade readers to think Bonnelly is the best figure skater? Or D, to critique Bonnelly for her behavior? So I want you to keep these terms in mind here. I'm going to go ahead and underline it. Do you think it's to inform, to describe, to persuade, or to critique? So think about what kind of text it is. Is it an informational text, a persuasive text? Keep that in mind as we read. All right, here we go. A performance to remember. Also, as we're reading, I want you to keep in mind these statements that I've put here, because your assessment is going to ask you about these statements and evidence to support these statements. And you'll notice that the evidence is highlighted with the color that goes along with the statement. So if this is something that you need help with, Sarah Bonnelly is a unique athlete, your assessment might say, how is this supported? Well, I've showed you examples of some evidence that would support this red statement in red. And same goes with the green statement. Surya Bonnelly faced criticism in her career. There's some green evidence highlighted that supports this statement. So just some things to keep in mind, and also I suggest you do as you read. All right, here we go. Remember, keep the author's purpose in mind. Not many people may be familiar with a French figure skater named Surya Bonnelly. Bonnelly is one of the most decorated individuals in women's figure skating. She won medals in nearly every competition she entered. Bonnelly did not start out as many young figure skaters do. For example, instead of learning to ice skate at a young age, Bonnelly got her start in gymnastics. From the beginning, she showed promise as she began winning competitions for her tumbling routines. Her excellence and competitiveness paid off when, at the age of 12, she won the World Championship in tumbling. From there, Bonnelly turned her energies to ice skating. Even at that young age, she was getting a late start in a sport that many skaters begin as early as the age of 4. However, her strong gymnastics background helped fuel Bonnelly's quick and early successes in figure skating. Bonnelly soon earned praise for her powerful and athletic performances. Her fierce determination to win was noted. Bonnelly was a strong skater, performing extremely difficult moves and landing them consistently. However, she soon found herself battling against strongly held stereotypes of what a woman's figure skater was supposed to be. This included ideas of a cool and aloof ice princess, or as cute as a perky ballerina on ice skates. To set herself apart, Bonnelly chose to wear bold and bright costumes instead of the pastel colors favored by other female skaters. It was also suggested by some that because she was black and did not fit the typical woman's ice skater model, Bonnelly was judged more harshly than other competitors. Bonnelly felt she had to do more than any other competitor to be accepted, and perhaps even more importantly, win. Her growing perceptions of a double standard became even more visible. During the 1994 World Championships in Japan, Bonnelly earned a silver medal, losing to Japan's Yuka Sato. A visibly upset Bonnelly claimed that her routine was far more difficult than Sato's. She not only refused to stand on the second place winner's spot at the podium, but also removed her silver medal from around her neck. Some say that she behaved poorly. To that, Bonnelly responded, "When you do the sport, the rule is that you're supposed to play fair, to be a good athlete and a good sport. I get it. But I think at this point it was more an act of saying, okay, this is too much. It happened many years in a row." Bonnelly is probably most famous for a bold and daring stunt she performed in the 1998 Olympic Games held in Nagano, Japan. By this time, Bonnelly was clearly established skating champion. She had already won numerous honors for the skating, including winning the French Nationals 9 times, as well as being a 5-time European champion. She was also a 3-time silver medalist. The Nagano's Olympics was Bonnelly's 3rd time at the International Winter Sports Competition, but she entered the game during a period when her skating performances that year were weaker than usual due to an ongoing heel injury. The extent of Bonnelly's injury was reflected in low scores. She realized that she would not earn a medal, so she decided to do something special in her last routine, the freestyle skate. The something special, a backflip, was a feat she was already known for, and it had already gotten her into trouble as the jump was banned by the Olympic officials because of the danger. But, knowing that this would be her last Olympics, Bonnelly decided to please the crowd and not the judges. In the middle of her routine, Bonnelly abandoned her planned triple lutz, a jump combined with 3 spins, and instead threw her arms overhead to do the backflip. Landing successfully on one skate, Bonnelly landed her flip cleanly and finished her program with no mistakes. The crowd went wild with applause and cheers. Although her feat did not win her a medal, it was a move that, given its risk and difficulty, made people remember her. 20 years later, people who saw this famous jump still talk about it. Bonnelly remains the only female skater in history to do this jump successfully in competition. Although still illegal to perform in Olympic competition, the flip was now named the Bonnelly. Bonnelly was also remembered for being a strong and outspoken woman of color in a sport that traditionally has few minorities. Her willingness to challenge traditional expectations for young female skaters has shown others that there are many different paths to success. All right, so now that we've read this article about this famous figure skater, what do you think the author's purpose is in this text? I'm going to give you some time in this video to respond to this in your mind. Do you think it's A, to inform, B, to describe, C, to persuade, or D, to critique? All right, the correct answer is A, to inform readers of a famous figure skater's path to success. All right, let's keep going. In other words, another purpose of this text is to explain how uniqueness can lead to success. This is more of like a theme that we could draw from the text. Remember, a theme is the author's moral or lesson that they want you to take away from the story. And another purpose that the author had in this text is to explain how Bonnelly stands out from other figure skaters and why that matters. So again, this text is to inform or explain. So keep that in mind as you take your test the second time. All right, so what is the main claim the author makes? Okay, I want you to keep this in mind as we read this next text that's on your assessment. So before we do, I just want you to make a prediction. You've probably already read this text once, and we're going to read it again. So what do you think the main claim is? That's the main argument that the author is making in this text. Is it A, a globalization jeopardizes cultural identity? Do you think it's B, globalization promotes cultural identity? Or C, cultural identity and globalization are at risk? Or D, cultural identity and globalization are flourishing? Make a prediction. What do you think it is before we read? Okay, now that you've made your prediction, let's go. Globalization and cultural identity. Globalization and cultural identity. You walk into a cafe in Moscow, and instead of ordering mors, a traditional Russian fruit drink made from boiled berries, fruits, sugar, and water, you decide to order a popular American soda. Instead of dining out on a meal of seafood, sausage, crusty bread, and cheese, you walk over to a well-known fast food restaurant for a hamburger. For many tourists, the sight of familiar logos and menus from home are in enough locations that they might even forget they are in a different country. When people speak of globalization, they are referring to the movement of and integration of people and goods from different countries. In an ideal world, globalization is good for sharing ideas, building economies, and helping countries discuss ways to work together. Globalization has been held up as the solution to many world problems, from overcoming poverty to better treatment of workers. There are other areas in which globalization is easy to use, such as music, television, and movies. Social apps used for communication are also in use around the world. This brings another level of influence from the country creating them. However, there is one disadvantage that accompanies this globalization. Quite simply, globalization kills cultures, and when cultures become lost, so can the national identities of a group and people. Why? Corporations and large businesses have brands to sell. When one city after the next brings on a handful of these companies into their country, it turns cities into clones of each other. In the race of some countries to take over markets in other countries, the unique aspects of cultural identity get left behind. Those fast food restaurants and coffee shops are great for business and the economy, but at what price? But the restaurant's presence in a foreign country is symbolic of something much bigger. The values of dominating culture have seeped into many other cultures, and because of the promise of financial success in a region that has possibly struggled for profitable business, that culture dismisses their own values and identity for something that appears to be more valuable. What effect does this have on a culture's ability to remain important, especially in the lives of young people? Advertising created by the influence of Western culture now heavily influences them. Much of what is put forth as a desirable is in an effort to sell something to make money. Unfortunately, what is popular at the time will change very quickly. With slick advertising that is seen repeatedly, people are persuaded to part with their hard-earned money in a never-ending quest to buy products they are convinced will improve their lives. Another area that shows the impact of globalization is fashion. T-shirts and jeans are normal for casual wear. Business suits are worn for professional purposes. Traditional clothing from various countries has not disappeared altogether, as it is worn generally for special occasions, such as festivals or performances. But there remains the risk of these celebrations becoming less important as the culture's values keep changing. Gone is the traditional clothing created generations ago. Gone is the music one may have heard as a child. Gone is the heritage of a people in favor of buying the latest digital technology or clothing. Stories, history, and connection have been sacrificed. How will the young people know who they are without the rich and meaningful traditions of their ancestors? What happens to cultures not rooted in financial success? Here's a scenario. Think of a grandmother in the United States out with her daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild. Maybe they're eating at a fast food restaurant, something which their grandmother has never done except in the last 20 years. The television is blaring overhead with graphic music, videos, and commercials selling sports cars. Her children are staring at their mobile phones. Her grandson is playing with a computer tablet. The bright lights of the computers and thumping beat of music down out the possibility of having a meaningful conversation. How does this grandmother communicate the importance of the family's culture and traditions to younger family members? How does she convey the way her grandmother sang while weaving intricate blankets, or how her grandfather explained the meaning of her name? Sadly, with increasing difficulty. All right, so this text was all about globalization and cultural identity. So now after reading, what is the main claim the author is making? Consider these options. A, globalization jeopardizes cultural identity. Think about what that word jeopardizes means. B, globalization promotes cultural identity. C, cultural identity and globalization are at risk. Or D, cultural identity and globalization are flourishing. What do you think? The correct answer is A. Globalization jeopardizes cultural identity. So they start off by talking about the positives of globalization, but then the rest of the article is arguing that globalization is jeopardizing, which means putting in danger cultural identity, people's cultures. All right. And in other words, here are some other main claims that this author makes in this text. The author claims that globalization tends to weaken or erase unique cultures. And the author also claims that American influence is spreading to other countries through international business. So keep this in mind as you take the next assessment. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. I wish you the best of luck on your assessment. Happy learning. Sincerely, Mrs. A.